Oi, gente, tudo bem? O convidado do filme falado dessa semana é extremamente especial. É um produtor americano, ganhador do Oscar, que fez simplesmente alguns dos filmes mais importantes do cinema americano. Vou citar alguns: The Godfather, One from the Heart, Apocalipse Now, The Outsiders. Vocês conhecem esses filmes? Foram todos dirigidos por Francis Ford Coppola, que é talvez um dos maiores cineastas do cinema americano de todos os tempos. Além disso, o convidado dessa semana produziu alguns filmes também muito importantes do spaghetti western, como The Good, The Bad and The Ugly, que é um filme do Sergio Leone, italiano, e que fez muito sucesso e apresentou e transformou o Clint Eastwood numa figura icônica, e que até hoje é reverenciado por cineastas como Quentin Tarantino, né? Mas também cito alguns outros trabalhos que esse produtor convidado de hoje veio a fazer ao longo da carreira. Little Fauss and Big Halsy, do imperdível Sidney J, que é um cineasta americano de extrema importância ali dos anos 70. An Italian in America, que foi dirigido pelo Alberto Sordi, que é um grande comediante italiano, que trabalhou com ninguém mais, ninguém menos que Norma Bengel. Sim, Norma Bengel fez um filme com Alberto Sordi. E, para terminar essa lista impecável de filmes, o HF de Jay Levey, que veio a se tornar também um filme cult, reverenciado como uma comédia extremamente ácida, uma comédia tipicamente americana dos anos 80. Enfim, já falei demais, mas quem é mesmo o convidado? O nome dele é Gray Frederickson. Essa conversa é imperdível não só porque o Gray Frederickson presenciou a produção do Poderoso Chefão, por exemplo, mas porque ele tem o know-how, ele tem a experiência e representa uma época do cinema americano, e principalmente da maneira com que ele era produzido. Então agora fiquem com essa conversa incrível, espero realmente que vocês gostem. Até mais. First of all, I have to thank you, Mr. Frederickson, for accepting talking to me today. It's an honor to have this chance to chat with you about cinema and to talk about a very important period of American cinema. And so before I make the first question, I would like to give you the word. Would you like to say something before the first question?
No, I'm impressed with your English. It's very good. I wish I could speak Portuguese, right?
Yeah.
Difficult language, Portuguese. I speak a little French, a little Italian. I went to school in Switzerland when I was young and met some people and got a job working in Rome, Italy. I knew nothing about movies, never thought about movies. In Oklahoma in the 50s, there was no movie production here at all, no business here. But I met all these movie makers in Italy in the 50s and 60s. And they said, why don't you produce a movie? I said, good idea, thanks. Yeah, how do you do that? And they said, just get the money. And, same today. If you want to produce a movie, get the money and you can produce a movie. And that's how I started. I just came back to Oklahoma, raised some money and did a little movie with John Barrymore Jr., and who later was the father of Drew Barrymore. Then I started working on little Italian movies, and then I worked on The Good, the Bad, the Ugly as a production person, and became friends with Clint Eastwood. Went to Hollywood with Clint, and that's how I got my start.
Yeah, and you have participated as well in the beginning. You have done some movies from Italian B-movie directors like Luigi Fanzi and Agostino Sansoni, isn't it?
And Henry Krasinski and Alberto Sordi and Vittorio De Sica and gosh, I worked on a lot of Gigi Vanzi, Sergio Leone, I worked with a lot of Italians. I did about 30 movies in Italy. when I was young, I didn't know what I was doing. I was in my early 20s.
So this experience was not really planned at all. So this was like an adventure. You were just getting in contact with the people in Europe, and you started to get involved.
I was working for an engineering company and learning to be a drafts person, drawing designs and stuff. And I hated it. And I met all the American filmmakers at bars and restaurants, and they had such a wonderful, glamorous life. And I was getting up at 8 in the morning and sitting in a dingy office all day long. And I said, I like their lifestyle better. So that's why I got started making movies and never looked back.
Yeah, I can
Fell
imagine.
into it totally by accident. When I grew up, there was no film school, no such thing as a film school.
Yeah, and this came later, yeah. And by the way, before our conversation, I was watching a movie of Alberto Latuada's Mafioso with Alberto Sordi as the main character, and with a Brazilian actress, Norma Bengal, that was a very important actress here in the 60s. And but he has an incredible talent for comedy. It's amazing how he has this physical approach. It's very well trained. He was indeed a very great actor.
He's a very nice person.
Oh yeah.
We did a movie called what was it called? Italian in America, and we had a bus. And he and Vittorio De Sica and me and a camera crew and the equipment got on a bus, and we drove from New York down to Florida and then across the United States to Las Vegas and then to California. And we were together for about 2 months doing that trip. And you know someone very well, right? And he was a dream. He was wonderful. He was so sweet. And De Sica was wonderful. He had one problem. He was a gambler. And so he would go off to play poker and get in poker games. And when we got to Las Vegas, we lost him completely for about 3 days. We didn't know where he was. He was off gambling. But it was a fun experience. And I got to know them very well, and we became friends.
You were acting on this film, indeed, isn't it?
Well, it was cheaper I was there. And so instead of hiring an actor to go to the different locations, I said, I'll do that part. So I did a lot of those Italian movies. I would also play a part just to save money. I wasn't an actor. I didn't care about acting. I even had a part in The Godfather.
Yeah, it's true. And what I would really like to hear, how was this dynamics on the set with De Sica, for example? Because the movie that you have participated in, it's a movie directed by Sordi, isn't it? But I can an Italian in America.
That's it. Yeah, Alberto directed that.
But was De Sica involved somehow? Was he giving instructions? How was this dynamics on the set?
He was sleeping. He was sleeping because he'd stay up late at night. So all he did with us was he would act, or he would sleep, or he would eat. That's all he did. Very nice man. He was getting old, and so he required a lot of rest.
And would you have, for example, conversations about cinema, about the experience of neorealism, or was it more? Was the experience of
I didn't know anything about cinema. I knew nothing about it. I was learning. It was like a school for me. I was worried about the locations and how to get into the Grand Canyon, or how to get the bus out onto the Miami Beach, or how to hire local electricians to light the scene. I was worrying about that all the time, and permits and driving licenses. And we never talked about the creativity of cinema. It was a job for me, a mechanical job.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. But now looking back, do you see this? How does these movies, especially these independent productions, how they made an influence in the cinematic vision and scenario of the American cinema of the 60s? Because Lucio Fulci, for example, and Emilio Miraglia, those were filmmakers that were making crime films, and they were somehow involved in bringing experience. You said Clint Eastwood, for example. I can see a kind of influence those filmmakers had on him, for example. What do you think?
No one in America knew who they were. They were totally unknown. And Fulci, I think I did 2 movies with him. And
but Marco Ferreri was an important.
Marco Ferreri, I knew him very well. He was a good friend, and I worked on a lot of pictures that I didn't even get credit on. I didn't get my name on it. But yeah, he was a big, heavy guy, and loved to eat and drink, and I became friends with him and his wife. And but again, we never discussed creative things. He would talk about what a son of a bitch De Sica was, that kind of thing. But we never discussed. That's a new thing, I think. Since film schools, now people are looking at movies like they look at literature. Back then, they didn't, I don't think. I mean, maybe they did, but I didn't. It was just it was job, like driving a truck. I was working on the production of a movie.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's true also, because now I think people got more and more analytical with the films, but in fact, when you have to do them, you have to dive and to make it on the ground. Yeah, so you have to do the.
You don't think about all those things.
Yeah,
I was at a film festival, a conference, and someone asked me, "Do you think that movies shape society, or does society shape movies?" I said, "How do I know what they do? All I know is you do it on budget, and you try to get it to the best exposure and theaters or wherever, and get it seen. I don't know whether it's, I never think about those things and never did. And maybe Francis Coppola did a bit. Spielberg never did. Maybe Scorsese did it, but not really. They just thought about making their movies. Now, they had movie directors that they were impressed with, Truffaut or Kurosawa, or some of the French New Wave, some of the Japanese directors. But basically, it was their own projects they were worrying about, not what society thought about it.
Yeah,
that's a film school thing.
Yeah, it's true, and it's indeed, you have to make the movie. You have to look to these films, but in a certain point, you have just to film, and this needs to go to find money, like you said. But you've spoken earlier about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that is an incredible. I think it's an important, very important film for me. So I would like very much to hear about how was the process, how was the shooting process of this film? Did you participate on the set directly, or did you make more the planning?
My job on the Italian movies was the Italian movies weren't making money in Italy, but the American movies were making lots of money in Italy. So the Italians changed their names to American names. They would hire an American B actor or a TV actor. They would film 2 or 3 weeks in New York or San Francisco or Grand Canyon or Miami Beach. And then we'd go back and finish the movie in Italy, but sell it as an American-made movie with couple of American actors. And that became my main job, was taking American film companies, Italian film companies, to America. And that was hard to do that with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I went to Spain, Covarrubias, Spain, where we were filming. And I was there for about 3 months, 2 months, just not very much involved, but preparing everything to move to Monument Valley in the Western United States. And we had a big scene where they blow up the bridge. You remember the scene where they're trying to get it and they blow up the bridge? So the first day we get ready to do the blow up of the bridge, and we all hide behind cars and duck below the desks, and they blow up the bridge and a railing falls off. Nothing happens. The bridge is still there. So we had to come back 3 days later. They fixed the bridge. We came back. Same thing happened again. So Sergio said, that's it. I'm bringing in special effects from Rome. They know how to blow up things. So a week later, they rebuilt the bridge, and they were saying, all right. And they had what they call a tied-off camera, which is a remote camera. And they put the camera close to the explosion and started running fast, slow motion, and then run away. And then when it blows up, it blows the camera through the air. And then they collect the camera and they take out the film and they have a slow motion up close of the bridge blowing. So Sergio told the camera operator, vai, go down and start the camera. Well, the special effects guy heard vai, and he blew up the bridge. And it was the biggest explosion I've ever seen. We were diving for cover. Lee Van Cleef, the actor, had just purchased a new Mercedes, and a big piece of wood went right through the door of the Mercedes. It blew up everything. The dust settled, and the cameraman was still sitting there looking up at the sun. And he said, camera 1, nothing. Camera 2, nothing. Not one camera was running. 5 cameras, not one was running when the bridge blew up. There was no bridge left. So at that point, we waited a couple of weeks to decide what to do. And they had 2 choices. One was to continue on to America. And the other choice was to sort of duplicate America and Spain. And because of the bridge, we did not go to America.
Yeah, wow. This is, I can imagine that was like a real adventure. Yeah? Like, because it's not, well, you can plan wherever you can, but in the end, it's getting a mess, or somehow I have to solve inside the mess anyway, isn't it?
The good news about that is I became friends to this day with Clint Eastwood. And Clint talked me into coming to Hollywood. And I'd never been to Hollywood. And when I arrived in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, it was January, cold everywhere, but there it was warm and sunny, and the palm trees and the smell of the orange blossoms. And I said, this is paradise. This is where I want to live. I want to be able to live here and make a living. And it took me about a year and a half to get a job in the movie business after I moved to California. Clint was helping me, but then he got a job to go do a movie called Where Eagles Dare. And so when he went off to Austria, a producer that I had met through him came to me and said he had a deal at Paramount Pictures to do a movie. And so I joined him, and we were partners for a long time, Al Ruddy. And Al produced The Godfather and Longest Yard and recently $1 Million Baby. And he and Clint just finished Cry Macho, which was a script that Al and I had for years.
Yeah, it's a movie that I'm looking forward to see. I think Clint is a master. Is a great filmmaker, and it's incredible.
Great
it's a great filmmaker. Yeah, it's incredible. But at the same period, you were doing also Little Fauss and Big Halsy. Am I right? With Sidney Fury?
That's what I did with Al Ruddy. After Clint left to go to Austria, Al Ruddy and I did Little Fauss and Big Halsy with Sidney Fury. And that picture, I used my Italian guerrilla film style knowledge of how to go make a movie quick and cheap and steal scenes and not pay for permits and hide trucks so we could shoot. And Paramount liked that. And so they hired us to make The Godfather because of how cheaply we made Little Fauss and Big Halsy. It was one of Robert Redford's first movies.
And it's one of the very important films of Fury as well, that after this, I think he got his career launched somehow, because he started to make some...
Lady Sings the Blues.
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
Yeah, incredible.
And he did, more recently, he did Iron Eagle series. I had lunch with him last week. He's still a friend. Everybody I've worked with over 50, 60 years are all still friends. I still see them. I still keep in touch with them, email, have lunch with them when I go to California. They're all still friends. Francis Coppola, Spielberg, Clint Eastwood, Sidney Fury, all the people I've worked with through the years.
And also you've spoke about this low budget goal you had. Could you speak also the importance of making this, searching for this low budget goal? Because I think this is what brings the opportunity to make bigger films, like you did with The Godfather afterwards. But first you had to prove somehow that you could make in a very low...
Yeah, you have to show that you could bring a picture in that's watchable, that's good, that is under budget and done at a reasonable price, that you know how to move the production fast and get your shots and make your day. That's the key, is on your schedule, you have the different things you have to do that day. You need to get them. If you don't get them that day, you have to pick them up the next day, so you don't start falling behind schedule. And I learned that with the Italians because we had no money. I did everything on those Italian movies. I was the driver. I was the accountant. I took the wardrobe to the cleaners. I picked up the lunches and brought them to the set. I helped load the magazines of the film Aeroflex cameras. I stopped traffic. I worked as an assistant director. I did props. I did wardrobe. I did set dressing. I did all those things because we would just be a handful of people. And so I learned all those jobs and did them. And so I do what I was doing when we got $1 million to make Little Fauss and Big Halsy, which to me was incredible. For Paramount, that was a very low budget. But for me, that was a big budget.
And The Godfather afterwards was 6?
6 million.
Oh, yeah.
The first Godfather was 6.
Yeah.
Second one was 12 or 13. And Godfather 3 was almost 60.
Yeah, and this is indeed very low for Paramount, for example. It's still a low budget, but it was of course, at the time as well, was a kind of a good condition to make such a film.
Yeah.
How was this moment to make Godfather? There's a it's a big story, of course, and there are a lot of related stories that are very interesting regarding the production. But what are your best memories from the process of producing those three movies?
Well, Godfather was just another movie, like any movie. It was bigger, but at one point, my parents, my mom and dad, who live in Oklahoma, said they'd heard about that movie because the book was very popular. Everybody was reading the book. And I thought maybe it'll be successful. But after the movie came out, it was mixed. Some people liked it, some didn't. It was just another movie. And over the years, it's become this incredible big iconic movie, like the best movie of all times. It wasn't when it was made. We had problems. They didn't like us. We thought we were going to be fired many times. There were lots of problems. They didn't like the photography was too dark. They didn't like the way Gordon Willis was shooting it. They didn't think Francis knew what he was doing. Even though we were making our day every day, they didn't like the performances. They didn't like Brando. They didn't want Brando. We had to fight for Brando. So it was just the normal pains of making a movie. Every movie has its. The only movie I've ever made that didn't have a lot of pain was a movie I made with Weird Al Yankovic called UHF. And that was a fun movie, and it's become a cult hit now. But it was just, nothing went wrong on that movie. It was very smooth.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think that the problems that you have got in the process, like in The Godfather or Apocalypse Now, for example, I think those problems, they made the movie better somehow too.
Sometimes.
And
Sometimes, like in The Godfather, we made a deal with the mafia. And so we had to start hiring all these real Italians. And one of them was the actor that played Luca Brasi. What's his? I'm drawing a blank on his name now. Nice guy, but he couldn't act. And so Francis called me and he said, "Come see this scene." I went in there, and he was there saying, "Don Corleone, I come to you on this day of your daughter's wedding." And Francis said, "What am I going to do?" And I said, "Well, we'll just replace him. We'll get someone else to take his part." He said, "I can't. The guy he's been in jail. He killed people. These are all mafia people. I can't get rid of him." So he invented a scene that you see in the movie where Kay and Michael are sitting at a table, and she says, "Who's that scary guy sitting over there?" And he's there rehearsing his lines. "Godfather, I come to you on this day of your wedding." You see him rehearsing the lines. So when he screws up in front of the Godfather, you realize he's nervous because of the Godfather, not because he can't act. So that turned out to be a good scene. He had no other lines in the movie after that. We took everything else away from him. Lenny Montana, that was his name.
Lenny Montana, yes. And how was the shooting? How long did it take to make the whole for the
77
first?
days.
This was the
Godfather
shooting.
2 was 100 and something, 102, I think. And Godfather 3 was about 150. And Apocalypse Now was 380 or 400, something like that, off and on, and it was crazy.
Yeah, and you have been following. You were with him during the whole year of coming and back. You were also going there to Vietnam, or
yeah. The Philippines.
Philippines, yes. Yeah.
I had 2 birthdays over there. 2 birthdays. We went over thinking it was going to be like 3 months, and I was there for 2 years. It was a nightmare. That movie was. I paid my dues in that movie.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a real, yeah, a real. I think it's today. I don't see it as possible anymore. This kind of filming.
Well, today you could do it because of computers, like the helicopters. You can have one helicopter and then just click and cut and paste and put 20 of them up there. We couldn't. We had to get all those helicopters. And that was a nightmare, getting them from the Philippine government and from Marcos and Fernando Marcos, the president. And I got them through a friend of mine from school in Switzerland that knew him. And but that was a major thing to get all those helicopters. We only had 1 day with them. That whole scene, we had all those helicopters, only 1 day.
Yeah, and in that period, it was the moment in which Philippines were in its like in the most dangerous moment to be in Philippines, yeah, because there's all the social problems and everything.
They were taking our helicopters away from us to go off to fight the war.
Yeah,
we had to get their helicopters wouldn't fly when we first made the deal. We had to go to Fort Worth, Texas, to Bell Helicopters and bring mechanics and parts to the Philippines to repair their helicopters so they would fly. So we put together their Air Force for them in order to have helicopters in our movie.
Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, because I would never imagine such a thing. But in One from the Heart, for example, that is the studio movie was shot in Zoetrope's studio, isn't it? And
that was a movie that was going to be on location in Las Vegas, but we had just purchased a little movie studio, 7 sound stages in in Hollywood. And Francis said, let's make it here. And so we built Las Vegas inside a movie studio. And we had so many lights. We spent $1 million on lights, on neon lights, that we cut off the power in Hollywood. The power people came and said, "We got no. You've used up all our power here." It was a big deal, and it was Francis's dream. He wanted to shoot it as much as possible in continuity, and we never could. Vittorio Storaro did not want to do that. The movie, I liked the movie, but it was a flop. It didn't make any money. But you know that Francis Coppola came here last year, and with my students, we made a movie, Francis's movie. Have you heard about that movie?
No.
It's called Distant Vision, and it's kind of his autobiography. And it's the first time ever a movie was shot live. And as it was being shot, we streamed it to Paris, London, Hollywood, New York, and Napa Valley, California. We pre-recorded a couple of scenes that were night scenes we couldn't do because it happened, we shot it in 2 hours. And we had some night scenes and we had a couple of scenes in Italy. So we pre-recorded those scenes and had them standing by. And it was like a big football game with the big truck. And we had all the special effects. We had the music, we had live music. We would cue the music, we would cue the special effects. We had 16 cameras. We had 6 sets. We had people changing clothes and running from one set to the other. And we had cables everywhere. And we shot the movie. We rehearsed the movie for 4 weeks with actors and with crew, getting to the different sets and all that. It was like a stage play and a movie combined. And when we finished the movie, everybody fell on the floor, exhausted. 2 hours, they said, an hour and a half, they said, we did it. Immediately, we went next door to the screening room and we saw the complete movie with sound effects and music, everything, and the end credits 10 minutes after we finished shooting. It's never been done and probably will never be done again. I don't know.
And this was done with the students of Oklahoma or there. This is very, very nice.
If you go to our website, Oklahoma City Community College.com, I think it's occc.edu, and you scroll on the programs to digital cinema, you'll see a documentary about us making the movie with Francis. He won't let anybody see the movie because it was an experimental film. And it had some mistakes, but not many. When we made it, he said, we might see somebody in the frame that's not supposed to be there. We might have a lighting failure. We might have a sound failure. But we didn't have any failures. We had one time a cameraman got caught on camera and he jumped out of the way. And we had another time where a microphone came down into the shot. Other than that, you wouldn't know it was shot live.
Yeah,
so you should watch it.
Yeah, I will. I will look forward to see it because I think it's also important because this is an experiment and it's quite nice to know what he was thinking at that moment. And
he talks about his philosophy on the documentary so you can see what he was thinking.
Yeah,
it was interesting. I'm going to have to leave in about 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
Okay.
So if you have other important questions.
Yeah, I have just only 2 questions left.
Okay.
And one is about film genre. I would like to know what interests you on film genre. If you like to develop creatively with the director to participate in this process.
Personally, I like lighthearted romantic comedies. I liked, Sleepless in Seattle or The Holiday or those kind of, I like Nancy Meyers movies. I like those feel-good movies. I've never really made one, I don't think. I'd like to. I like to come up with ideas. I've really been a line producer, hands-on producer, and not so much a creative producer. The only movie besides the one I got going, I made some little movies when I moved back to Oklahoma, and I got those going. But the only movie really that I was responsible for getting started was Apocalypse Now, because I liked John Milius, we were friends, and I'm the one that sort of pushed it to get made. I like to work with the director, but I work with them to hold them back. I'm the guy that says no to everything. So I'm not very popular with directors, even when I give them a chance. But I'm doing a movie right now. I'm doing a documentary. I like documentaries. I love documentaries because you can wake up in the morning, you can look outside. Well, it's raining. I'm tired. I'm going to go back to bed. We won't shoot today. You can do that in a documentary. You can't do it in a movie. Yeah. You go no matter if you're sick, if you have a broken leg, you go, you work. A documentary, you can say, I'm not in the mood today. I don't feel good. So I'm doing a documentary right now about an oil company that went to England during World War II to help drill wells for the oil effort in the war effort in England. They drilled the wells in Sherwood Forest. And it's a very interesting documentary. So I'm working on that. And I have a couple of other projects that maybe not happen. I don't care. I've done enough movies. I've done over 50 movies. And so, I mean, it's fun. It's fun to keep looking forward to doing more. And I maybe will do more. I don't know.
And finally, if you could give that advice to filmmakers who are wanting to produce their own project independently, what would it be, those advices? And if you can tell your favorite films, I would be glad if you could say some of your favorite films.
My favorite film, I think, was Arthur. Remember Arthur with Dudley Moore? I love that movie. Like I said, I like light romantic. The Holiday, I love. I think it's a wonderful movie. I like that kind of movie. My advice to young filmmakers is just do it. Get the movie made no matter what. Now, you need to make a movie, basically what you need a package. And there are 4 things in a package. There's the star, there's the script, there's the director, and there's the money. If you have those 4 things, it's like a chair. It's solid. You can take away one of them, and with 3 things, you could still get it made. If you have the star, the director, and the script, you could probably get the money. If you have the money and the director, and a script, you could get the star. You need at least 3 legs of that stool. If you can't get a star and you're just going to make it with a script, you got to have something to help you entice someone to give you money. And if you've never made a movie, why would they give you money? Why would I give you money to make a movie if you've never made one? But if you tell me, well, my friend is Andy Garcia, and he's agreed to come and play a part in this movie, and we could use his name and everything, then you're starting to build a package. If you say, my uncle is going to give us $100,000 and I have Andy Garcia and here's the script, at that point, I'll look at it, because then you might have enough of a package to sell it for the proper financing. And also, when you're making a movie, think about who your audience is going to be. Don't make something new. All my students here make movies, and every one of them has a down, depressing, sad, tragic ending. That's why they do that. People don't want to see that. They want something that's not so tragic. And I said, is the world that bad? And they said, oh yeah, you think it's a better filmmaking if it's got a sad ending. And I said, no, it doesn't. It should be uplifting. It should be a fun ending. It doesn't have to be sad. But you should think about where you're going to sell it, who's going to buy it, and who's going to go see it. And think about that. Talk to people and say, well, I like that idea. I would go see it. Then you say, all right, now I'm onto something. But don't make a movie just because you like it.
Yeah, those were good advices. Thank you very much, Mr. Frederickson. Thank you very much for having this conversation.
Congratulations to you, and good luck in your future endeavors. And keep me informed of what you're doing. If you ever get ready to make a movie, let me know.
Obrigado por ter assistido o episódio até aqui. Se você gostou, curte, compartilha. Se você não gostou, manda mesmo assim. Às vezes tem alguém que você conhece que pode gostar desse canal. Você também pode seguir a gente no Instagram, sabia? Porque a gente está lá, @filmefalado. E você também pode me seguir no meu perfil pessoal, pedro.nmartin, porque às vezes eu coloco também algumas postagens compartilhadas. Agradeço ao Fábio Gatti, a Isabela Moricone e a Roberta Braz, que está me ajudando na produção desse programa e que é essencial para tudo que tem acontecido aqui. Valeu, gente! Até sexta que vem, hein? Espero que fiquem bem.